friends, welcome to the first Sangha in English. As many of you know, we had our first Sangha in early February in Spanish for our Spanish community. So good to have you here, whoever is listening. Thank you for your interest. The intention of these live Sanghas is to connect with our community, with our friends, overseas in India and Spain and Mexico and other parts of the world, and come together to talk about the deeper dimensions of our existence. And I shared this with the other Sangha in early February, and my intention is to get together to talk about these topics. We don't pay attention to our inner dimension as much as we should. And this is not for everybody. Of course, if you are listening, it's because you're interested in the message and in exploring. So welcome to these Sanghas. We're going to be having these Sanghas every month or every other month, depending on the language. And in India right now, it's Saturday night, 9:30 p.m. So usually people go out at night, but this is a very good option. Many people are tired of going out to bars, parties, drinking, and even when that has its time and it's okay, if you are a young person or you enjoy that lifestyle, right? We are not here to judge. That's not the message, but sometimes a lot of people find a little superficial the lifestyle of going out with to the same places, and really they don't leave us any inner experience or any transformation, any substance. And yes, of course, we get together with friends we love, we have fun, that's perfectly fine. But it is very important also to dedicate time to really talk about ourselves, right? Our inner dimension. What do I mean by that? Well, the inner dimension of people is your soul, your spirit, and this is not regarding religion, right? Spirituality is universal. It is connecting to yourself, with yourself, however it feels right for you. Of course, yoga and spiritual teachers, people who have mastered joy and their energies within and outside, and they seem to have a very good management of their life, they recommend that we need to spend a lot of time in self-exploration, self-inquiry, inner exploration. And for some people, this is very strange. We have never done it, or maybe we are afraid to explore. Maybe it's confusing. We don't know really what it is, what are the benefits. But this is what really yoga is all about. Yoga, the science of yoga, yogic practices. They are universal, they are health-oriented, and they are dedicated to exploring ourselves, our inner dimension. So before we go into the subject of human suffering, because that's something that we all go through, it's inevitable. Before we go into that, when I say we are exploring our inner dimension, let me tell you what yoga says about it, what the science of yoga. So we have three bodies or three dimensions of existence. They are called three planes, three dimensions, or three bodies. And what you see outside is the physical body. It's called the gross body. And this comes from very ancient texts in India, from the Vedas and the Upanishads. These are the foundation of everything we know about yoga, yoga practices, psychology, health and wellness, inner exploration. All of that comes from other texts, but primarily from those very important foundational sacred texts that were there. They were written by seers and sages, very accomplished people in their management of their energies and their life. So we have a lot to learn from these wealth of knowledge that is there for us. It's a gift to humanity. And in the West, in America, where I live, and many people live, many of my friends live, we don't really learn these when we are young. Nobody teaches us about meditation, awareness, consciousness. Nobody really is aware of the deep knowledge that is in these areas of self-exploration. So the three bodies that the yoga philosophy and yoga science explains is very important to remember to understand human suffering as well. So like I said, the first dimension is the physical existence, the gross body, the physical body. And this is what is most important in Western thought. It's all focused on the gross body, the physical body, the way you look. We live externally. Youth is physical appearance is most appreciated. It's kind of like a very superficial way of looking at life, the gross body, the physical existence. And we fight against becoming old, right? Everything in our culture in America and other countries is geared towards avoiding getting old and being young forever and anti-aging and all of that. They bombard us with things like that. And that causes suffering because it's impossible, right? The physical body grows old, the physical body decays, and there is nothing that can stop that process because it is meant to be that way for a very important reason. And we're going to see why. Then the next dimension of existence is the subtle body, is also called the astral body or the astral dimension of existence in yogi philosophy. And this is everything that is energy. The subtle body includes the nadis in yoga. These are currents of energy. You cannot see it or touch it. So the subtle body is emotions. It includes our thoughts, our mind. Mind is everywhere. Mind is universal. We don't really know what mind is. We in India, in the Vedas and the Upanishads and all those amazing texts, they really go deep into what is this subtle dimension, what is the causal dimension, and all of that. So it's fascinating to use that for your self knowledge and the management of yourself, of your mind. The third dimension of existence, or the third body, it is also called, is the causal body, the causal plane. This goes beyond the subtle body. This is the cause of everything. And that's why it is called the causal body, because it is believed that everything that it comes into existence in the subtle or the physical dimension comes from the causal body. And the causal body is also related to Akash or manifestation, space, sound, right? The origin of the universe, all of that, which is another topic that we will discuss in another Sangha. So why do we refer to these three dimensions of existence? Well, because it brings our attention to the spiritual aspects of our lives, right? Our spiritual dimension. You can call it your soul, your spirit, your inner being. It's called many different ways, but it points to the same thing, right? Your inner dimension. I call it soul or spirit. In India, it's called Atman, or Jivatman is the individual soul of every person. And Atman is more like a universal soul, and we are all connected to this Atman. And beyond that, in yogic teachings, they call it Brahman is the creator, the origin of everything. This is called many other things in other countries, in other cultures. You can call it the creator, the source energy, or even God, whatever you believe in. But if you are curious about exploring your soul, your spirit, your inner dimension, which is what grounds us, is our anchor to life. If you are curious, it means that you are ready, right? You are evolving to explore this very important dimension. So let's go into human suffering. And you have a chat where you can comment or put questions. So the human suffering in Eastern philosophy, it's explained in slightly different ways depending on the philosophical school that you're reading or studying, depending on if it's Buddhism or Vedanta or Sankhya or whatever tradition. But to make things very easy, they all point to the same thing. And the Buddha is one of the icons, right? Siddhartha Gautama, the young prince of northern India who gave away everything he owned. He was a prince, very wealthy. And he went out of his palace city one day and he saw suffering, he saw people dying, he saw diseases, illnesses. And he became very curious to understand the origin of suffering and to end suffering. So the Buddha is one of the icons of trying to understand human suffering. And everything is related to our mind, right? The way we manage our mind is the way that we are going to approach suffering and pain. And also in other traditions, also very important masters or prophets or spiritual leaders or teachers, they also dedicated their lives to understand suffering and to end suffering. And there is a vast wealth of knowledge, of information, of scriptures, of books that give us the formula to not suffer. And I'm going to explain the difference between pain and suffering. And I'm sure you heard this before. In yoga teachings, they say a lot that there is a difference between pain and suffering. There is a phrase that is very, very important here. They say, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And what do we mean by that? Well, pain is part of life, right? Because if you see life from the point of view of a person, a soul, a spirit, you know that when coming to this world, to this physical existence, it comes with pain. And pain, it's inevitable, it's part of life, right? If you want to be in this world and live experiences and have relationships and enjoy life, it comes with pain, right? We are going to go through pain if you get sick. You're going to go through pain if you're hungry, if you get ill, if you have a disease, if somebody hurts you, depending on your views, right? How people can hurt you. So pain is there, pain is going to be there, and is always going to be there. But suffering is under your control. And this is completely in the way you see life, in your perspective, and in the way you manage your thoughts. So this is why I'm fascinated with yoga teachings and science and with mental health, because really, when you go to school since you're little, nobody teaches us this, right? Nobody teaches us a class about what is suffering, how we can manage ourselves to avoid suffering, and what to do if pain comes, and what is consciousness, what is awareness. Nobody teaches us about that. And that is very sad, right? To waste our lives without having this amazing knowledge that can really transform our lives. So the way that the Buddha said is that you have to manage yourself, right? Nothing is outside of you. And if you are Catholic, for example, Jesus Christ also talked about this all the time. He said, everything is within you. Your most precious asset and tool to manage yourself is within you, and nothing is outside. So this means that by concentrating on your inner dimension, on your spiritual aspect and the strength of your soul, you can manage pain in a very different way than if you are disconnected. I was watching a documentary on Australia, young men in Australia. There is a suicide crisis in Australia and many other countries. But particularly, it caught my attention because they said that 1 in every 5 young men are taking their lives. And there is a campaign going on to address this mental health issue in Australia because it's getting to a level of national crisis, health crisis. So one young man who was thinking about committing suicide, he was interviewed by 60 Minutes, Australia, a very serious, reputable news outlet. It's an investigative journalism. So they were interviewing this young man and they asked, what was the reason you tried to take your life? And he had everything going on. He was good looking, young, healthy, athletic. He was into a football team. And one of his friends had taken his life, a very young man, 20, 23 something. So the young man who tried to take his life but didn't succeed, he said that several things happened in his life. A partner had walked away from his life. And then several things happen after that, like a domino effect. So this happens, right? Some people are overwhelmed by events and they decide they don't want to live anymore. And it's a difficult subject to address. It's controversial. As many of you know, I'm in the mental health field. And for 20 years, I have worked with people with trauma and suffering. They come from other countries, from war, political instability. I work with refugees, immigrants, first in the legal field, and then I slowly transitioned to the mental health field, helping people who have gone through very difficult situations. So I have seen everything. Pretty much. I have seen a lot of suffering, pain, mental suffering, emotional suffering. So I became more interested in working with people in their inner dimension rather than the legal aspect, which is very important, right? Because when your life is being threatened and your country is at war and your family is being killed or kidnapped by gangs or crime or governments, you need legal protection. You need human rights lawyers. You need to get a visa, get protection, all of that. But if you learn to handle those very difficult situations so they don't overwhelm or they don't go into extreme suffering, right? It is better manageable, much better. So there is a toolbox for these. There is a system that shows us how not to suffer. So it is a very long and complex topic, but very simply, what I want to share with you is that because we don't have these tools, right? We are not taught in school, we are not taught growing up at home that life is suffering, like the Buddha said, right? There is pain, but you can manage that pain in a way that doesn't become like a snowball effect, right? So the more we think of ourselves as victims of life, right? We see life as life is happening to me, right? All of this is happening to me. And of course, there are cases that are very, very extremely difficult, like a very difficult disease or something where there is mass executions in a country. Of course, those situations are so overwhelming that we are going to go through deep trauma and we are going to need help from very different angles. But in our day-to-day life, right, the way we manage pain is by not letting it overwhelm our lives. If we understand that pain is part of life, right, is part of life, we are not here in this life to be comfortable and happy, right? We hear a lot in our modern culture about happiness, how to be happy, how to achieve happiness. And that is fine. Of course, we all want to be happy. But if you expect that life should accommodate your needs, if you expect that life should make you happy, if you have an expectation that your partners should make you happy, satisfy you in every way, you're going to be very disappointed because that's not what life is about, and life doesn't work that way. And we hear a lot of coaches and spiritual teachers talk about these, right? Talk about the law of attraction and the way you see life. And if you see your life as life is happening to me and I am a victim, you are going to be stuck, right? Stuck in a place where you're going to suffer. And that suffering is avoidable. All we have to do is shift to the middle, right? And don't expect external things to make us happy. So the only way to be happy is within you, right? We have to be happy inside, within us. And being happy within us involves many different things. It involves emotional health, emotional balance, psychological well-being. This is subjective, but whatever makes you feel grounded and stable, right? I see a lot about that among people, right? Our community, that they are very easily taken off center, very easily. And there is a way to come to the center, right? To ground you. And there are many, many different tools that yoga science provides. I call these a toolbox because it's having your box of tools, wonderful methods and techniques that have been provided thousands of years ago. And now they are coming to America, to the West in recent years, recent decades. Now we are paying attention to these methods. But there is a reason why they have existed for centuries, because they work. And I want to give you an example. Jon Kabat-Zinn is a very good author. This book is The Mindful Way Through Depression. And he wrote this book with other two authors, and Kabat-Zinn is a very serious and well-known expert on mental health. And he draws from yoga science, everything in this book and other books he has written. He evidently learned about human suffering, pain, mental health, how to manage your energies. And very important, he talks a lot about awareness and observation. And this is one of the cornerstones of yoga science. Observing instead of being overwhelmed by events in your life. Many spiritual teachers are talking about these, and they talk so much about it. And I see sometimes live sanghas that the spiritual teachers are explaining these, and people are having a very difficult time to understand, to really get into it, to experience these. And that's fine, right? But sometimes we wonder, right, why it is so difficult for human beings to come to the center and to stay grounded in your soul, in your spirit, which is so strong and resilient. Nothing can hurt your soul or your spirit. Nothing can interfere with your soul or your spirit, because it is that part of you that is always there, is the observer of everything that happens in your life. Your soul is eternal. It was never born, it will never die. When the physical body dies, the soul continues into other lives. All of these are the basic teachings of universal spirituality, of yoga science. And these mental health experts of today, they are not saying anything new. They are borrowing from these teachings that are universal wisdom teachings. So I want to make emphasis before I finish, to manage pain and not suffer unnecessarily. You have to observe things, right? You have to be anchored on your spirit and on your soul and be the observer. And this is what is referred to as self-awareness or mindfulness, right? Mindfulness is observing your thoughts and the emotions and physical sensations that they cause. And this is the key, right? The more we practice, the better we become at it, and you observe. So it's very important to observe people instead of getting involved with events in the world and suffering, right? Yes, of course, we can be human rights activists. I am one. Social activists, social workers. We can help the world to improve, but we don't get overwhelmed by the suffering of the world, right? We come back to the center, we stay grounded, and we understand that pain is part of life, and we observe with awareness. That is the key to managing suffering. So that's a very good book if you want to read it, Jon Kabat-Zinn, and he explains in more detail how to do these step by step, how to go through the process of observing your thoughts, not letting them overwhelm you. If you notice, really, if you observe your life, your own daily life, you will notice when you start becoming aware of everything you do, every movement you make. When you are pouring water on a glass, you are aware that you are putting water on a glass. When you walk to the kitchen, you are aware of your steps walking to the kitchen. This is a practice, and it may sound too much, but there's no other way, right? We want to really manage our energies, manage our mind and our thoughts. We have to start by practicing in everyday mundane activities. Even I hear a lot of people saying that folding the laundry after washing your clothes, folding your clothes is very therapeutic. And if you stay aware and present and aware of every movement when you fold the clothes, you really are bringing your mind to the center, right? To this spiritual dimension of yourself. Nobody teaches us this, right? We grew up just doing things, doing, and our parents never say, you know, there's a way you can handle your life by being aware. Or school teachers or leaders in our community, you know, they really don't put enough attention to this very important practice. There is a large community of people around us that practice this, as part of their life, right? And most of these people are monks or nuns or swamis or religious people. Maybe they are aware of these practices to come to the center to stay grounded. And what happens when we start being aware of every movement? Well, we start being aware of every thought. Probably not every thought, because we have more than 60,000 thoughts every day, and the majority of them are useless. So if you think before acting, before responding to someone, if we think, is this helpful, what I'm going to say? Is this being requested? Is this beneficial for me and the people who are going to hear it? All of that is a practice. It's a beautiful practice of being conscious, being aware. And the same applies to managing difficult situations, right? Right now, we're going through COVID. We are isolated. Hopefully, we're coming out of it this year, but it has been very difficult for the entire world. But it is also a wonderful opportunity to go within. And maybe this is Mother Nature giving us a clue to focus more on our inner dimension, on finding this anchor and this center that we all have within. And of course, if you are going through difficult situations, of course, you can talk to professionals, coaches, psychologists, counselors, doctors. It helps to talk, right? Just talking to someone who is really listening with presence is healing in itself, is therapeutic. But if you can remember something from this Sangha today, is that you can heal yourself. You can overcome your pain, your difficult situation, your suffering on your own. Self-empowerment is the new yoga practice. It has always been there, but now we are starting to understand that we are empowered human beings. We don't need to share our tragedies with everyone we see or suffer from a position of victimhood, or constantly talking about events in our lives that causes us so much suffering. All of that is really a waste of our energy. What we do in yoga practice is to bring your energy to the center and be aware. Observe. You are the observer of suffering. You are the observer of your events. We are observing everything that happens. And something very important that is in this equation to manage suffering is to have trust, right? You can call it faith, you can call it trust, whatever your belief system, it's okay, as long as you trust the universe, right? I tell people a lot, trust your life process. Your life process, whatever we are going through right now, it is for a reason. This is also part of the yoga knowledge, the yoga teachings, right? Trust the creator, trust Mother Nature, and go with the flow. This is very, very important in the formula to manage our pain. To minimize suffering as much as possible. You are a self-empowered being. You can manage your thoughts and your life to work for you. And you have to trust that everything that's happening, there is a divine reason behind it. Sometimes we get lost in suffering and in difficult situations, and we lose track of this very important detail. It sounds like a very minuscule, very small detail in our lives to have trust in the Creator, but it is the cornerstone of health, of mental health and well-being. Trust the Mother Nature, trust the creation. And instead of fighting with things that are happening, stay with yourself, stay with your center, with your inner being, and go with the flow. Sometimes when you let yourself go, you surrender to what's happening. You cannot change it, you cannot control it. The only thing we can control is ourselves. And everything starts in the mind. So I hope this is helpful and interesting. I'm trying to let the sanghas in about 30 minutes, so it's not too long. And I hope you enjoyed the message. Let me go check to see if there are any comments. We have some people watching. Ale Flores, hello Ale. Thanks for being here. And thank you everyone for staying here with me. Okay, so I'm gonna be recording these sanghas and putting them on YouTube, and it is important to join, right? I'm gonna be trying to do it at different times to see if it accommodates more people in different countries, but it's pretty difficult to try to synchronize everyone. Okay, Dr. Vivek says very helpful, thank you. And so we have several people here. Umakant G, thank you. Namaste, very good to see you. Irma Ditchking, thank you, Irma. Thanks for staying here with us and watching. I'm glad it's helpful. And I'm sure you know all of these, right? I'm not an expert whatsoever, but I'm sharing my own experiences, my own experience in learning all of these and working with people who have suffered and are suffering a lot, right? And understanding the mind and all of that. Okay, so I'm gonna let you go if you don't have any more comments or questions. The next Sangha is going to be very interesting. It's going to be about why the world needs spiritual men. And this is interesting to see because when we see the word spiritual, some people get scared because they think religion, and a lot of people are not religious. So the Sanghas are for everyone. We don't try to make you believe anything. I just give you some tools that I have learned, and I hope they are very helpful in your life and your health and your well-being. And the next Sangha is about that. I ask a few of the men that I have met in my life that are very spiritual to give me comments because it's very interesting. They are all kinds of men, right? And spiritual men are very strong. They are not weak at all. Sometimes we think that because a man is a spiritual is weak or is too passive. No whatsoever, right? Spiritual men are leaders. They are very strong. They have very good skills. They are very grounded and centered, very respectful towards women and everyone. And the world needs more men like that. So hopefully you will enjoy it, the next Sangha, and also it's coming in Spanish and English. Thank you, everyone. Namaste. Stay healthy and take care of yourselves, free spirits, and I will see you on YouTube if you want to watch more there.